Hi everyone, it's Amber from Crafty Yarnz here, and I am going to show you how to do a double crochet. So I've set up my chain here and I'm going to show you how to do the stitch. So when we are working in a chain, based on the Craft Yarn Council standard of how to do a double crochet, we are going to skip the first 3 chains and we're going to work into the 4th. That's because these 3 chains will work as a stitch, if you like, or represent a double crochet going forward. So to do the actual stitch, we're going to hold on to our working loop. We're going to yarn over. We're going to work into the front of our chain. When we're at the back there, we are going to yarn over. We're going to pull through, and we've got 3 loops on our hook. Now if you already know how to do a half double crochet by watching my other video, which I'll link to in the notes below, then this looks very similar, and we've done the same process to get to this point as we did in the half double crochet, but this is the double crochet, so we're now going to change it up a bit. So we're going to do yarn over, and we're just going to pull through 2 loops. And we're left with 2 loops on our hook. We're then going to yarn over again and pull through 2 loops. So this gives us a taller stitch. And you can see we've got the chain here, which is nice and tall, and then we've got our double crochet. So to show you again, we're yarning over, working into the front of the next chain, yarning over at the back, pulling through, yarning over, pull through 2, and pull through 2. I'll do that again. We're yarning over, going into the front of the chain, yarning over, pulling through, yarning over, pulling through 2, yarning over, pulling through 2. Do it again. Yarn over into the front of the chain, yarning over, pull through 2, pull through 2. Okay, so we've finished our row of double crochet. Looks nice and springy. We're going to chain 1, 2, 3, and we're going to turn. So as in my previous videos for the single crochet and half double crochet, depending on your pattern, it will say that these 3 chains either count as a chain or don't count as a stitch, or don't count as a stitch. If they count as a stitch, we will work into the 2nd stitch here. If they don't count as a stitch, then we'll work into the 1st stitch here. So we're going to yarn over, and we're not going to count it as a stitch today. We're going to go under those 2 loops of the V. We're going to yarn over at the back, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. I'll just do a couple more here. And again, I quite like using it not as a stitch because it gives me generally a nice straight edge as we work up. But again, make sure you check the pattern, because that may affect your stitch count, or it may affect the look of the pattern or the size of the pattern. So just make sure you follow whatever the pattern tells you to do. You can see this is a nice tall stitch, and it tends to be a bit more flexible. Enjoy! just going to go to the end of the chain here, and I'll show you what we do when we go into our next row. Okay, so we've finished our row. We're going to chain 2 based on the Crafty Yarn Council standards, and we're going to turn our work. So if you've already seen my single crochet video, you'll remember that I talked about whether the 2 chains counts as a stitch or not. If the 2 chains don't count as a stitch, we're going to work into the first stitch here and under those 2 loops at the top there. If the 2 chains does count as a stitch, then you'd work into the next one. Again, just make sure you read your pattern and know which one you're going to be working into. So we're going to yarn over, and for this purpose we're not going to count these 2 chains as a stitch, so therefore I'm going to go straight into the first stitch here, which is under the 2 loops of the stitch that we made in the row below. Going to yarn over at the back, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. So again, the reason why I like to not count those 2 chains as a stitch is you can see I've got a really nice straight edge here. But again, this could affect the pattern, it might affect the counting, or it might affect the look. So just make sure you follow what the pattern tells you to, whether it's counting as a stitch or not counting as a stitch.